So pizza was the go-to comfort food during the pandemic, but now pizza chains are facing headwinds. The cost of food items is on the rise, and the cost and availability of labor is really tough too. The good side, pizza is as popular as ever, but selling pizza isn't as profitable as it used to be. Today, we're going to talk about the future of pizza chains. Plus, we're going to look at consumer spending on services versus goods. And we're going to talk about how Patagonia's founder turned the whole business over to charity. That's right now on Everything We Know About Retail. It's the show where we tell you everything we know about retail. We broadcast live on the internet most Thursdays at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. But hey, you can check us out anytime you want. All of our shows are archived on YouTube at everythingweknow.show. So my name is James Cook, and I'm coming to you as always or often live from Indiana.
And my name is Ebere Anokute, and I'm coming to you from New York.
My name is Keisha Virtue, coming to you from Florida.
And we all research retail and real estate for JLL. I am physically in Indiana today, as you can see behind me. I'm virtually in Manhattan. Ebere, you're actually in Manhattan. Keisha, you're virtually on Rodeo Drive today.
Yeah,
So you can do some virtual luxury shopping after this.
I know.
Absolutely.
I should have Ebere with me.
Right.
And,
And I'll walk
the
outside the
customers.
office and go say hi to James.
and I didn't even realize it. I didn't even plan it, but you can see, well, over this way, there is a pizza place
Oh,
on the street. So
wow.
unplanned, but
I don't believe that you didn't plan that, James. I'm just going to be honest. I feel like that was coordinated, to be honest.
hot tip for our viewers, there's a website called Unsplash that offers really great royalty-free photography that I often pull photos from. So that's what that's from. It's actually what Keisha's is from as well. Anyway, photo talk is over and retail talk begins. So eBerry, what do you know about retail?
James, I thought you'd never ask. The first thing that we know about retail is that the CEO of Patagonia has given the entire company away. Right. So this was a major story a few weeks back. We never got around to discussing it, but obviously it's very pertinent to our, audience and our industry. So just to take a step back, Patagonia, as I'm sure most of us probably know, is an American outdoor apparel company. I honestly should have worn mine today. If I thought ahead for 2 seconds, I would have been in here in my nice, typical Patagonia pullover that I discovered in college and was all the rage, at that time. And it was founded by Yvon Chouinard in 1973 in California. And although that name is dangerously French, it appears he is an American. So this is an American company, just to put that out there, because when I read the name first, I'm like, okay, clearly this is a French person who came to the US. But no, he was born in California with a beautiful name like that. So he founded the company in 1973, like I said. And since then, it's grown into a business that's now valued at $3 billion. So very, very. So let me ask both of you first. If you had a business valued at $3 billion, what would you do with it?
I would
Trick question.
I would certainly give money to charity. Like there's no doubt about that.
For sure.
And a lot, millions. But would I give the whole business away? I guess it depends. Do you have a family? Do you have
Right.
later generations that you want to support?
Right. Keisha?
Yeah, probably the same. It depends on if I'm trying to pass it on for posterity to my daughter or if I want to maybe sell it and do something good with the money. But
I mean,
Absolutely.
neither of us is going to give it our whole $3
no,
billion
no, no, no,
business to charity. Let's be
Yeah.
for real.
no. What?
Myself
What do you-
either,
yeah.
honestly. But I have to always think, how much would I mean, maybe I would have to have $3 billion to be like, hey, I'll give it away. But how much money would it take for me to be like, yeah, I'm good, I don't need the rest? But for our good friend Yvon Chouinard, apparently the number was around 3 billion, because whereas other people might look to sell the company or take it public, he and his family have given it entirely away. So what they did exactly, and there's a lot of, there were lawyers involved, obviously, so the language is a little bit dense. But from what I understand, they transferred ownership of Patagonia, which was already privately owned, where they owned 100% of the shares, to two new entities. So they created a specially designed trust and a new nonprofit organization, and they did all of that to preserve the company's independence, right? Because the founder was very opposed to taking the company public and having to, worry about maximizing shareholder profits, and also to ensure that all of its profits are used to combat climate change and to protect undeveloped land all around the world. So that is an amazing, amazing thing that he's done. Obviously, I don't need to explain to our viewers the threat of climate change, but this sort of action that's being taken by, a billionaire is more or less what we'd want to see, So back in August, the family, what they did was they split it into two separate things. Like I said, 2% of overall shares, which were the company's voting stock, went into a new entity called the Patagonia Purpose Trust. And that entity will ensure that the company is run as a socially responsible business and to make sure that it gives away all of its profits. And then they donated the other 98% to a new nonprofit that they've called the Hold Fast Collective, which will now be the recipient of all of the company's profits. And they're going to use those funds to combat climate change. So sort of a two-pronged approach, but the overall goal, again, is to make sure that the company is doing something good for humanity and for the world, which is really, really noble, I think.
So, Eves, I gotta ask, is this a tax move?
You're a cynic.
Keisha,
What a
ever the
cynic.
cynic. Keisha, ever the cynic. Listen, I'm sure that's how a lot of us probably viewed it at first, right? And that's not, your fault, Keisha, because a lot of other philanthropists who have made these sorts of donations have walked away with gigantic tax credits as a result. But because of how it was done, because of how the way that they split everything up, there is no tax benefit to this. There is no charitable deduction that can be made. This is a purely, if we can believe it, if we can suspend disbelief for a second, it appears to be a purely philanthropic effort. I wanted to make sure I quoted the CEO himself because I thought this quote was kind of perfect. He said, "I didn't know what to do with the company because I didn't ever want a company. Now I could die tomorrow and the company is going to continue to do the right thing for the next 50 years. So that to me, it says it all right there. It says his entire ethos. He seems to be a very particular, unique sort of character in that despite all the wealth that he's amassed, he hasn't really allowed that to change himself, really. He still wears, very modest clothing. He drives a Subaru from what I read. And so clearly, he started as a rock climber who just more or less came up with this amazing idea for this apparel company. And it's gotten a lot bigger than he wanted. But like I said initially, he was adamant about not taking the company public because he did not want to have to focus on, shareholder profits as opposed to making sure the company is doing the right thing. So this is an amazing, and again, this is not a brand new thing for him, right? Because the company has been giving away 1% of sales for decades to grassroots environmental activists. So I love this move. I think it's an example of, a billionaire putting his money where his mouth is, really, stepping up for the greater good of humanity. And, we know sustainability is a major topic in fashion right now. We've talked about, the growth of resale companies and how they've expanded and stuff like that. But this is something at the other side of that, right? So as opposed to making it any sort of edit to their actual business processes or the materials that they're using, they're making sure that the money that they make from that is going to go back into making sure that we do our best to keep the world as healthy as we can. So I think it's an amazing endeavor on his part. And I wonder if we'll see other billionaires or other wealthy individuals follow in his footsteps. Remains to be seen. I don't know what you guys think.
That's an interesting quote. I didn't ever want a company. There's got to be a great story there. I don't know enough about the background of Patagonia, but I'm sure there's articles and books to dig more into that and find out how somebody who didn't want a company became the CEO of a $3 billion
Exactly.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that as well. I'm sure it would make an epic movie. And then this as the ending where I can imagine a scene where he just, throws his papers up in the boardroom and just walks out and he's like, give it away or something like that. So I can't wait till they dramatize this. But until that happens, James, you got to tell me, what do you know about retail?
All right. Well, the second thing when we know about retail is that pizza chains are hitting post-pandemic headwinds. So no surprise here. I think pizza is the world's favorite food? I'm going to say that without any data to back it up, but I do have data that pizza is America's favorite food. There was a poll that was run recently of 2,000 US adults. 59% of Americans say they love pizza, and that's the highest percentage. So it's a true comfort food. You know, you derive a lot of pleasure from it. Such a simple food, though, you know.
Truly.
Number two, number two, 55% Americans' favorite food, cheese, tied with fried chicken and pasta. So I don't know how this survey, and let's just say this survey was conducted on behalf of Tums, and it was a Tums press release. So
I love
I
it.
mean,
Yeah.
like indigestion oriented food is
Yes.
kind of at the
Right.
top of this list, so I can see where that's working. But I love that cheese, fried chicken, and pasta is tied for number two for America's favorite food. You guys big pizza lovers?
Love pizza.
Yeah,
Love
me
it. Love it.
too.
Love it. Love it.
Absolutely love pizza. I'd say I like pizza a lot. I have to be in the mood for it, but it almost never disappoints.
Yeah,
My
there's
thing
always room
with
for pizza.
Yeah, I mean, my thing with pizza is even like the cheapest, like frozen grocery store. You know, the pizza that's so cheap it doesn't even have sausage on it. It's got hamburger on it. Have you guys ever seen
Oh my gosh.
that?
I'm not
I
sure I
still
do.
like it. Like I like all pizza. I never met a pizza that I didn't like. Not that I don't have preferences. Like I love good
Mm,
pizza,
yeah.
but
Of
you know,
course.
in a pinch, like for lunch or breakfast, sometimes even I'll have a cold slice of pizza left over from the day before.
Which is one of the few foods that I think tastes fine cold and hot, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
never, in a rush to warm up some pizza because I'm like, it's the same experience almost, whether it's warm or it's cold. So another point for pizza.
Yeah, and then another point for pizza, which is why it did so well during the pandemic, is it travels really well.
Exactly.
So it takes a half an hour to whatever, 40 minutes to deliver a pizza, and it's still pretty good. The professional like pizza delivery places often have heated or insulated pouches. You compare that with like if you get a burger and fries, those
Oh man.
fries are going to be soggy.
Hmm.
Right.
The bun will be soggy, and the burger won't be warm. It's just always a great takeout and delivery food. During the pandemic, Americans really flocked to pizza. So, for example, Pizza Hut saw an 11% growth in same store sales in 2021. Domino's, Papa John's, all the chains saw big growth in sales. You're probably wondering how the pizza chains are doing today. Now pizza is facing headwinds. So diners are now freer to go out to more places. So it was kind of before we were sort of stuck with takeout, delivery. Now people, even those who are more skittish, are feeling comfortable about eating out again in sit-down restaurants. So there's more competition.
Sure.
But then there's also labor, cost of labor, scarcity, availability of labor is a lot higher. And then inflation too. In general, profits are down. There was a survey that the National Restaurant Association ran, and this is for all restaurants, just not just pizza chains, but 85% of restaurant operators said their restaurants are less profitable now than they were in 2019. So that's a lot, 85%.
Yeah, that's a vast majority. So, I mean, in this sort of context, how are the chains dealing with these cost issues?
So raising prices on menus, mostly. There's
Hate to
still
hear it.
some, what's that?
I said I hate to hear it.
Well, you got to do it. I mean, somebody's got to pay those costs. So costs of what they're selling, menus are raising. And the consumers for the most part are accepting these new higher prices because wages are up as well. The labor issue is actually the most interesting part of the story, and some but not all chains are partnering with third-party delivery apps like Uber Eats, Grubhub. So when I say partnering, what that really means is they're saying, hey, we don't have enough delivery staff, so we're going to try to outsource some of this to third party. So what that means in the most integrated form is that you order on a third party app and it's tied directly into the point of sale system at the chain. So I order on the chain's website or I order on Grubhub and it still goes right into their point of sale system. And so it's made the same way as they would make it for their own delivery person, but then the actual delivery person is the gig worker, the Grubhub delivery, the Uber Eats delivery. And so that's how some chains are trying to deal with that. Of course, the problem is there's no profit in it. So they're maintaining market share, but they're paying the third parties. I mean, we don't know how much they're agreeing, but we know that oftentimes these agreements are 20%, even 30% of the overall cost of the ticket. So that's all of your profit right there.
Truly.
So James, quick question. Who was the first to do like a third party partnership?
Well, the first one that I know about was Papa John's. So they did one 3 years ago. Several partnerships 3 years ago, and they are, and I don't know if this is a coincidence or not, the only chain that is still today seeing positive same-store sales. They're up 1.9% in Q2, while the other major chains are seeing negative same-store sales. And Papa John's also has the most ambitious growth plans. They said they're going to do 1,800 net new stores by the end of 2025. So the three biggest chains in the U.S. are Papa John's. Well, in terms of size, it goes Domino's, Pizza Hut, and then Papa John's. I think that's right. Yeah. Domino's is like 6,000. Yeah, Domino's and Pizza Hut are like 6,500-ish. Papa John's is a little over 3,000. What's your favorite of those three?
Oh my gosh.
Interesting. Papa John's.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've had any of those, but it's
yeah.
John's.
I'm gonna say Pizza Hut is my favorite of those, just because I like the deep dish, the pan pizza that they have, and definitely prefer Pizza Hut. But again, I'll eat Papa John's. It comes with that dipping sauce, like garlic butter or whatever.
Yeah. Delicious.
Domino's is totally fine too.
Pizza Hut, definitely, I have to give them their credit for innovation, because I feel like back in, I don't know, the early 2000s, they were the first ones to have cheese in the crust, right? Which really just
stuffed crust.
Yeah, there you go. It's really changed the paradigm of pizza, if I can coin that term, by including that. So shout out to them for sure.
Yeah, and that was not the early 2000s. That was in the 90s. The reason why I know, I was a cook at Pizza Hut when that came out. And that would have been, let me think about this, not early 90s. It would have been 96, 97, somewhere around there.
Right.
Yeah, and so we all had to learn. I don't know how they do it now, but then you would get, like mozzarella sticks that you buy at the grocery store. They looked like those, but you actually rolled them into the edge of the crust. So you had to, because all the dough was made fresh every day, and so you had to physically roll in all that cheese.
It's genius, honestly. It's really genius. And I also have to say that I can't help but think of this in terms of, retail and omni-channel, right? Because it feels like partnering with these third-party sort of services is a bit of an omni-channel strategy, right? It's almost kind of doubling down on the same channel, but still trying to be more convenient to their customers. So it's no surprise that Papa John's, being the earliest to sort of pursue these sort of partnerships, is the only of these top three that is seeing positive sales growth this year. Because I think on, like, when you think about apparel retailers or any other sort of category that's been penetrated by e-commerce, the ones that were the quickest to adopt e-commerce and to get those omni-channel fulfillment strategies are the ones that have, emerged from the retail apocalypse of yore, still intact, So I see a similar sort of pattern here as far as the benefits of embracing new technology.
Yeah, it's, the technology is great. I think, though, a lot of folks view it as a deal with the devil, because it's the business model. If you're outsourcing to one of these third-party apps, it's just tough. It's tough to make a profit because you're paying so much more for delivery. And in both cases, like I would say the delivery person gets paid the same. It's just on the one hand, you're an Uber Eats or Grubhub worker and you get to pick your own hours. So that's the advantage. Whereas if you're a delivery person for Pizza Hut or Papa John's, you're getting about the same wages, but you have to work when they tell you to work. So that is why a lot of people are saying, I'm not going to deliver for, any one chain. I'm going to be a gig worker. But
right. And also that gives them the opportunity to deliver for a bunch of different types of cuisines, right? Whatever's on Uber Eats, as opposed to, waiting for Americans' pizza penchant to tick up or something.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of pizza getting delivered still. I mean, it is, there's no lack of love for pizza.
Sure.
Also, so we talked about Papa John's, positive same store sales, one of the first major chain to partner with third party. Pizza Hut is in the middle. They have now started partnering with Grubhub and Uber Eats. 55% of US locations have third party now. And actually, I'm not sure. I didn't put in my notes. I said Grubhub and Uber Eats. I don't have in my notes which exact third parties they partnered with. So I don't want to misstate. But more than half of locations are now integrated with third party. During COVID, they rolled out Hut lanes. So we got so many fun words out of COVID. We got Chipotle lanes. And Hut lanes is digital pickup for Pizza Hut. And sales were up after they ordered those Hut lanes. And then so we'll talk about Papa John's being early adopter, Pizza Hut being in the middle as far as third party, and then Domino's not partnering with any apps as of yet. I read an article that perhaps there's this idea that they may in the future, but there's nothing that I've heard of. And their sales are down. Same store sales are down by 2.9%. I think that, outlook for pizza, obviously positive, like everybody loves it. I think that the real headwinds are inflation, which we expect is going to turn around. I mean, I was talking to Ryan Severino, our chief economist, expects it to start reducing within the next year. So that's, good. And I think there's going to be a new reality. There's got to be a new partnership with these third-party apps for the apps themselves to survive, where it's still profitable for restaurateurs to partner with them. Because if it's so expensive to partner with these apps, like, at some point these restaurants are going to have to, either the app or the restaurant is going to go out of business because they're not making any profits.
That's right.
Somebody's got to give, but in the case of Domino's, they're not making any profits even without the app. So it feels like maybe, unfortunately, that might be the way of the future.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. And I mean, I want to be very clear here. The app and the profits are not tied directly to each other. There's so much going on. I mean, each one of these chains has different operational structures, different technology. It's just the app is just the third party partnership is such a big story. And the question of how all restaurants deal with that, I think that's going to be the great divining question of F&B over the next 5 or 10 years is how everything shakes out with these third party apps. So with that, I'm really hungry for pizza now. But we don't have time for that because first I need to know, Keisha, what do you know about retail?
Well, the third thing we know about retail is, guys, I love talking about experience, and fortunately, there's always a lot to talk about. So the first thing I'd like to show you is we took a look at Q2 spending for services, and they're significantly up across the board. So performing arts was up 86.3% from Q2 2021 to Q2 2022. Wow. Accommodations are up, movie spending is up, amusement parks and arcades are up, spectator sports, and of course F&B, which is what I kind of want to zero in on today. So according to data from both Yelp and OpenTable, dining out is back to pre-COVID levels. Just diving a little further into the Yelp data, increase in searches for reservations are up 107%. Searches for outdoor seating, 1,000%,
What?
and indoor
That's a
seating
lot.
up 66,360% from Q1 2020 to Q1 2022. Now, of course, we're
Whoa.
looking at, that March 2020 figure was really, really rough. So, of course, we're looking at points in time where, of course, the comparisons are going to be pretty great, but still 6,000% from Q1 2020 is pretty remarkable. People just feel comfortable going out now, even if it means sitting indoors next to other people. So that is a very, very good thing.
So what about, like, that's kind of big picture. Do you have any sense of like what specific types of food and beverage are experiencing?
James, I'm so glad you asked. There are some very interesting takeaways from what kinds of restaurants are opening or increasing their openings the most. So if we look at data from Yelp from January to April 2021 to the same period of this year, we see a couple interesting trends here. Conveyor sushi businesses are up 500%.
Hmm.
I don't know if you guys know what conveyor sushi is, but basically you sit at a very long table and you see it just kind of the sushi just kind of rotates around, so you get to pick and choose, I guess, what you want to eat. So that's a very interesting concept. Dinner theaters and supper clubs are both up some 200%, and that really just brings to mind that whole 1950s vibe where you're sitting down, eating dinner with your spouse, and there's some sort of live theater performance going on in the background. Or supper clubs, it just feels very like, I don't know if you like watch an old mafia movie. You see these really, really fancy restaurants with plush booths, and everybody's
Right.
taking their time and eating. It's a pretty cool concept. Um,
Right.
Interestingly, too, buffets are up 62%. So apparently, people feel comfortable going back to the buffet now after what happened in 2020. And bubble tea also has because remember that in 2020, a lot of the buffets they tanked, they crashed. A lot
Yeah.
of bankruptcies
Yeah.
because obviously nobody was really comfortable with that. But now they're back to some extent, and bubble tea also has its fans, 53%. I don't get it, but hey, there are a lot of people who like that. And of course, alcohol related places like brew pubs, gastropubs, and breweries are all seeing double digit growth as well.
That's great. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the obviously conveyor sushi is fun, but that's not like, there's not, at least where I live, there's not a billion conveyor sushi places. I think that the most interesting one for me has to be the buffets, because as you said, Keisha, like I remember in 2020 and probably on this show, we said, are there gonna be buffets in the future?
Exactly. We I didn't know if anybody's going to feel confident again, but clearly it's coming back. Okay, so to the point of the alcohol related places, I like to talk about a little place that just opened near me. It's called 60 Vines, and it is, if you look at the picture on the left, it is a wine on tap concept.
What?
And yes, it has 6 locations: Florida, Texas, and Tennessee. And I'm super excited that it's now in Boca. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced the whole wine on tap thing before, but the idea is that you seal the wine in these casks, and it keeps the wine very, very fresh. So you just like beer on tap, you just pour how much you need. And the thing is, diners can try a very, very wide range of wines in very small quantities. So, you know, you're not overdoing it, but it also pairs with really, really good food in a very social setting. So I am very excited to try it. I hope to go on my birthday this month. So
Yeah,
have you
honestly,
guys ever done it?
I need to next time I'm in Boca too. I need to go hit it up or one of the other locations because it looks amazing, and I've never had wine on tap. But obviously, Keisha, we hear about in other categories suffering from inflation and from labor shortages, staffing. Is that a problem across the board? In this context as well.
Ebere, it's definitely not all sunshine and roses, because definitely inflation is definitely hitting the restaurant business as well as far as dining out. People are yelping about inflation, about rising prices at restaurants. So um, mentions per million words was up 46% from 2020 to 2022. So people are complaining. They're also complaining about the shrinkflation aspect of the restaurant situation. So you're paying the same, but the quantities are much smaller. Um,
Hmm.
it's been a pretty big deal, and it's particularly a thing for more affordable cuisine like hot dogs, burgers, pizza, and some seafood as well. But I'm trying to figure out how you shrink a hot dog. Maybe maybe somebody can help me understand, but I don't get it. I mean, but yes, hot dog, burgers, and apparently pizza, James. I don't know if they're making um, the
Mini pizza.
pizza instead of like maybe a quarter inch smaller or something. I'm not really sure, but definitely shrinkflation going on there.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think, at least when I compare like cuisine in maybe the East Coast to like Europe, for example, right? The portions over there are definitely a lot smaller, but
Hmm.
you still kind of feel full. I feel like after eating, I don't remember feeling when I visited over there that I was still hungry after. And if I were to compare, that to where James lives, where the portions are,
Yes.
enormous, right? It's just, very, very interesting. Like, yeah, I wonder if the actual effect of seeing the food be smaller would make me like feel unfulfilled, because I'm telling you, like, I feel like I've eaten smaller portions and still felt full, so it's an interesting portion
I mean,
sizes vary, so it's an interesting
yeah,
idea.
totally with the whole Europe thing. But for me, it's like if I go to a restaurant, they're serving a lot of food. I'm banking on taking that home, and that's like 3 meals for me. So,
Right.
I mean, it is going to count like if I can't eat like 2 more meals out of that. So, yeah, I
But
mean,
Keisha, it sounds like this trend of shrinking portions is really on the budget side.
more
Like,
so. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it sounds like, if I were to go to one of the chains, I don't know, like Applebee's or something like that, they probably aren't shrinking their burgers there, because that's not where you'd go to get the cheapest burger in town.
Mm-mm.
Mhm. But to Keisha's earlier point, how do you shrink a hot dog?
Yeah. I'm so
Is it
lost.
a
I know.
pig in a blanket? Is that what it's become? Is this a
I
philosophical question?
That's a very good question, Ebere.
I wonder.
That
I
we
was
will have to
just
find out.
you know how I like to watch travel videos on YouTube. I was just watching one on cheap eats in Las Vegas, and there's a casino I think it's off the strip. It's not one I've ever been to, that sells these huge looking foot long hot dogs that are like, I forget how much they are, but they're cheap, especially for Vegas. And I'm
Wow.
like, that looks amazing. I got to go find that place. So they haven't shrunk their hot dogs yet.
That's good. Um, so one other thing that we're seeing with the restaurant industry is that the staffing shortages are really starting to affect the whole business. So staffing shortages combining with more people dining out is leading to increase in wait times. So more than 13 million diners were seated via Yelp in the first quarter, and that's up 48% year over year. So imagine more people going, and of course we're dealing with this whole staffing shortages for the past year or so. So 23% increase in reviews mentioning long waits, and then people are actually talking about the staffing shortages in Yelp as well. So 229% increase in reviews mentioning short staffing. So this is definitely something that's a pain point for restaurants. So restaurants have been working on this by adjusting their opening hours. So maybe they're open fewer hours than they were before, or you know cutting down their menus. I spoke to a restaurant owner in Meisner Park in Boca as well, who has been cutting, either during the pandemic they were cutting down their hours or adjusting their menu. They weren't definitely not doing any shrinkflation there because it's a nice restaurant, but they were making some other changes to accommodate the fewer staff, and they're automating their check-in processes as well. A lot of these restaurants are, of course, using OpenTable or Yelp or some other process to get diners checked in, have their wait times, so it's just sent directly to their phone when the table is ready, that sort of thing. So that's been helping, but we'll see how long it takes for this whole staffing shortage to resolve, as well as the inflation.
There was an article in the New York Times a few weeks ago about how diners in New York City have gotten much more into going out for dinner earlier. And this may be a part of that, as places aren't open as late or they're shorter staffed. Um, Ebere, are you going out? 'Cause you're the New Yorker on the show. Are you going out to eat earlier on a Friday or Saturday night?
I can't say that I am, but maybe that has to do with why I've had difficulty, getting seated at some places recently, right? Maybe if I did go a little bit earlier, I would have more luck because around that usual 7:30, especially on like a weekend, 8 night, type of dinner time, it's almost impossible unless you book the reservation, a week in advance. So I'm going to take that as a tip. Maybe I need to move my dining time and then squeeze in like a nice snack around like 10 or so.
Yeah.
Well, it's all about what life stage you're in. So I'm to the point now where my wife and we try to, like, we often go out on Friday or Saturday night. And on Friday night, I try to shut down work at like 5 and we'll be at a restaurant by 5:30 or 6. Really, you get your pick of tables if you're going to a restaurant at 5:30. And then my parents, who are boomers, they go out to dinner at like 3:30.
Wow.
They like to really have the restaurant to themselves.
All right, I love it. I'm taking notes. Maybe that's my next step. The
Yeah.
earlier dinner dining.
Yeah, when you look around and you're the only person seated at this table, you're in the next life stage. Kelly Smith says she's going to try out 60 Vines in
nice.
Dallas next week.
Awesome.
Let us know how it is.
I mentioned Vegas. There's a last time I was in Vegas, I stayed at Resorts World, and they have a food hall. And one of the bars is a self-service beer place. So you get a card, and then it's the series of taps, and then you like scan the card, and you just get charged for whatever beer that you serve yourself. So I was really excited to go to that, and went with a friend, and the guy's like, "Oh yeah, we're not doing that right now. Just tell me what you want, and I'll get the beer for you." So I was a little disappointed.
Interesting.
So thank you so much, Kelly, for your comments. We've got a couple of other viewers today. Diana is another one, and we've also got a viewer from Saudi Arabia whose name I cannot read because it is in Arabic. My apologies, but thank you for joining us from the Middle East. I want to let everybody out there know you can always read our latest retail research, and we do new reports like all the time. They're for download at jll.com. Newest one is luxury, right? That's the latest that Ebere wrote. What's up after that? Keisha, you've got one on holiday spending coming down the pike,
That's
right?
right. Mm-hmm.
So you're still compiling that. Any hints? Should we be optimistic about the holiday shopping season?
I think it's fair to be optimistic for sure about the holidays.
Okay.
But you'll have to wait till future episodes and tune in there if you want to hear the actual takeaways.
Well, we will reveal the actual results of the survey here when they are released. And I also want to let folks know about the Where We Buy podcast. I do audio interviews with all kinds of, retail and retail real estate people every week. And they are available on whatever podcast app you like to use, or you can find us on the web at wherewebuy.show.
You can also find us on YouTube. And if you're there, do us a favor and hit the subscribe button. And also click on the bell icon so that you get a notification when we put out a new show, which is every single week.
Or you can follow the JLL retail page on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Check us out on LinkedIn. That's where the most people in conversation go. So follow JLL Retail and you get notified when we go live. We're going to be back next week. I will be traveling for work. I will be in Toronto at the Canadian ICSC next week. So Keisha and Ebere are going to plug along ahead without me. That's next Thursday at 9 Pacific, 12 Eastern. So Ebere, what did you learn about retail today?
James, I learned that new openings for conveyor belt sushi are up 500%.
Keisha, what did you learn today?
I learned that Patagonia is worth $3 billion. I mean, that was news to me for sure.
And I was going to say the thing that Ebere said because I found it so shocking. So I'm going to say buffets are on the rebound.
Yeah.
That's what I learned today. I'm excited. Real quick poll. When was the last time you guys went to a buffet?
Oh my gosh. I can tell you the last one I went to, which was Sweet Tomatoes, and that has to be at least a decade ago.
Ebere, you remember the last time you went to a buffet?
I I went to, I think they call it a food hall to try to be, nicer, but it was a buffet. There's one called the Duke in near like, I think it's on 52nd Street near 6th Avenue. I went there maybe 6 years ago. That was the last
Oh,
time I went
wow.
to a buffet. Yeah.
My last time was breakfast buffet. And when I was in Las Vegas at Resorts World. Speaking of
there you go.
Resorts World, fantastic breakfast buffet. And that was the first buffet I'd had like coming out of the pandemic, and it was delicious. So if anybody out there wants to know more of everything we know about retail, you can join us here again next week.